Knows Nada. My name is Brianna, and this is the Mama Knows Nada podcast. We have brought back functional nutritionist Lauren from LA Sand Wellness. She's here to talk to us all about how we can stay true to ourselves in this new year through nutritional choices and all that fun, good stuff. She's the expert, not me. Lauren, I love having you here. I'm so glad you were able to talk to me again. Oh my gosh.
It's been almost a year. Can you believe it? I think it was like 11 months ago that we had our first podcast.
Aww.
It's been a while.
That's so cute.
It's almost our anniversary.
It doesn't feel like that long. This year has been
fun.
Jammed packed full of lots of things. So these last few months have felt like a minute. But nobody cares about my personal life. So we're not going to talk about that right now. As we make our way into 2022, why is it important for people, especially women, to put their health first?
I mean, I think especially coming off the last year or two that's been so stressful, really just understanding like how we can support ourselves, you know, our systems, our mental, physical health can really just help our overall health and outlook in life. Like, I just think that, you know, the more emphasis we can put on taking care of ourselves, the more, you know, we'll be able to pour from our full cup kind of situation, you know, like we're not just constantly trying to pour from that empty cup, you know, being able to have the capacity to go forth in these stressful times and, you know, live the life that we want to really requires us to take care of ourselves on a level that most people just aren't doing.
Oh, I like that. I think that's so true. Like if we don't I always say, I said this before I had kids, and I probably mentioned it in other podcasts. Like, if I don't take care of me, how can I take care of anybody else? Like, kind of like, so that resonates with me. So in all of this chaos and, you know, turmoil, for lack of a better word, how can people maintain their sanity?
I think, one big thing that I really try to get my clients to realize is like, one, recognize your stressors, you know, not just like the mental, emotional stress in life, but also realizing what stressors you have that affect your physical health. And then overall, just realizing like, okay, the less stressors I have, the more resilient my body is. And how can we, you know, remove some of these things, increase some of the things that reduce our stress or mitigate it, and go from there.
Can you give some simple examples of like simple switches we could do to get started?
Yeah,
on that sanity maintenance journey.
For sure. For starters, I would say connecting to your breath is like one of the biggest things you can do. You know, like your breath affects your nervous system, which will then affect your gut, how you digest. It'll affect your immune system. It'll affect your hormones, all of those things. And so in order to kind of make sure we're not on this downward spiral, reconnecting to your breath and just making sure that you're breathing deeply will actually reduce like your reactions. You know, it'll lower your nervous system's stress levels so that your body can do all the things that it's supposed to do. So one thing that I love to talk about is the 4-7-8 breathing technique. Basically what you're doing is breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 7, and then breathing out. And if you do that, you can really feel like immediately a sense of calm come over you, you know? And so I think that's just like one simple way that people can really return to health for themselves, return to a calm state so that they can be, you know, in a better state of mind to be able to handle all the other things that come their way, you know?
Oh, I love that. I say that to my kid all the time. I'm always like, take a deep breath, especially when he gets very frustrated. Mommy, you're making me so frustrated. I'm like, you have no fucking idea, kid.
And it's amazing that his parents...
Okay, Declan.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, because I can finish. I'm like, let's take a deep breath together. And it's, you know,
but how often do you do that yourself? You know,
usually when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I can't sleep and I need to take a deep breath, that's when I do it for myself.
I think
it's funny you say that. It's funny you say that. Go ahead. I want you to finish.
Well, I just think, so many people, parents especially, probably know that that is an appropriate way to manage your stress levels for a child. But how many actually apply that for themselves,
I know that it's an appropriate method, and I still don't do it myself on the regular. I will say, though, on this whole topic, I find myself before snapping at my son. I have a very short patience level, and it has definitely grown with the introduction of my child into my life. But I find that I will clench my fist and take a deep breath before I bark at him or raise my voice. So I do it, but probably not to the magnitude you're talking about. And this morning I was multitasking, taking the dog for a quick run. And I realized how shallow my breathing was. And I'm like, I need to get back into yoga because I'm not doing that deep, replenishing kind of breath. I think is what you're talking about. It's one thing to go with your 3-year-old. It's another thing to really do what you're saying is that methodical, intentional, full circle kind of breath that really brings an energy back to you. I've done a lot of that 4-7 breathing and 4-7-8 breathing in acupuncture in situations like that. But I like how you're saying maybe you should do that every day.
I think that's just one,
Heard,
that's
boss.
just one way that we can bring ourselves back to center and sort of reduce some of the stress in our lives. But, that's not always an option that's available to us. Maybe we just if even think about it. Maybe we're just running through life and forgetting all of these things that we have at our disposal. But, if you can just think okay, if I can get my nervous system to a calmer state in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to be more resilient to stress. My body will then be able to take care of itself in a much better capacity, And so anything that you can do to reduce stress, maybe that's not a deep breath in the middle of a stress-inducing moment, but maybe that's scheduling time off or scheduling time for relaxation so that you can just get yourself into that calmer state, We can do that through a lot of things.
I like
food,
that.
Maybe minimizing some of the things that ramp up our nervous system, like caffeine, So there's certain ways that we can get ourselves into a calmer state that don't always necessarily involve a Zen wusa moment, I
think that's important too. Since our last conversation, I have limited my caffeine intake. Naturally too, I'll say. I wake up, the first thing I do before I have coffee now, this is per our last conversation, is I have at least 16 ounces of water.
Love that.
Before I even drink a cup of coffee.
Love that.
Then I take my probiotic. And then I will have coffee while I'm eating my breakfast, which usually involves a smoothie because my kid's obsessed with them. So the one area that I need help with, and you'll scold me, is I just love wine. One step at a time, I think, but
Well, and
this is what.
There's research that shows that some wine in our diet is actually super beneficial. If it's lowering your stress in some capacity, it can be helpful. But if we're consuming, a bottle and wine a night, that's not lowering our stress. That is adding to our stress levels. You know what I mean?
You're totally right. I also think it's important to highlight, and again, I'm not the expert here. This is my naivete and my limited research and just my own self discovery, I guess you could say. I use myself as a test product for things. So also, when you are consuming alcohol, I've tried to, if I'm not picking my son up from school, for example, I will have an afternoon glass of wine instead of an evening glass of wine. That way it kind of has time to go through my system. Because if you look at it, what it does to your heart rate, and this is kind of off topic and not what I intended to talk about, but that's okay.
I would love to talk about this.
What it does to your heart rate, especially right before bed, it's when you think you get a good night's sleep because you passed out because you had so much alcohol. How many of us did that in college? Yeah. I'm raising my hand. Yeah.
Wait, beyond college?
So, but so you think I slept for 8 hours because you passed out, but really your heart rate's going all over the place, and it's not quality sleep. Yeah. It's not that deep, like REM sleep. If I'm not misspeaking, correct me if I am. Yeah. And a friend showed me an app of like what wine does to you after you consume it. She had like one of those like body monitors. I was like, holy shit. So after that, I was like, okay, if I really feel like I want a glass of wine, like let me move it before, or like with food and stuff. So I try, especially now as like a mom, to eat, if I'm going to drink alcohol, eat it with food, and try to do it like a little bit earlier in the day, so that when it comes time for that bed at 9 o'clock or whatever, my heart rate isn't skyrocketing so that I can get to sleep. Yeah. See all the things I've learned in the last year?
It's a great tip though, honestly. That would be one thing that I would recommend. Like if you're trying to reduce your stress load and like, trying to get your nervous system to a calmer state so that your mind, gut, all the things are functioning properly. I don't know if moving it to the middle of the day is necessarily the most healthy, but
noon's a little early, but like 3, 4 is a little bit more, I think. So happy hour.
But the reason that might be working for you is that alcohol actually raises your blood sugar tremendously, which will get your heart pumping, all of the things. And so when you're shooting your blood sugar up like that, and you're not doing it with food, like you don't have enough fat or protein or, carbohydrates too in your system, then you're going to plummet after that. So you're going to be on this sort of blood sugar roller coaster, which is then going to make your guts nervous, your brain nervous, lots of anxiety. Too much alcohol can lead to other mental issues. But if you consider that blood sugar roller coaster, like that alone will cause a ton of stress on the body. And so if you can keep that more stable by pairing alcohol with proteins and fats, that alone could help you tremendously,
There you go. That's a fun fact for you, everybody. Get to work on that.
Maybe cut it down a little bit if you can. Like a doctor's recommendation for a female would be 1 glass of alcohol per day.
That's manageable.
Seems reasonable.
Let's go back to that mind-gut connection. I was studying to be a sommelier before I had kids. I just love wine, and I was not the kind of som that was just going to spit. No way, I'm not wasting wine. Anyway, that's a different topic for a different day. It's abuse, okay? Some grape had to suffer, okay? I've totally derailed this conversation.
No, that's fine.
Anyway, it's funny.
Wine.
Right? Okay, you have to. You have to have a little decadence in your life. Just, something to look forward to every once in a while. Right? That and chocolate. Oh, that's my favorite. Anyway, so you were talking about the mind-gut connection, which I think is really important because this was news to me, and I've actually heard this discussed between my chiropractors and acupuncturists and stuff like that. So what do people misunderstand about the mind-gut connection?
Okay, so, do they understand it at all? Like, truly, I didn't even know that this existed until I started going to school for nutrition, was trying to figure out my own issues. So one thing that I think people aren't understanding, that's just not common knowledge, is that your brain and your gut are connected via your nervous system. So through your spinal cord, you've got something called the vagus nerve that connects your brain and your gut. And so the two are constantly in communication with each other. What affects your gut will affect your brain and vice versa. So, when we're talking about mental health, we can't do that without addressing physical health or gut health, and vice versa. If we're talking about gut health, we can't not talk about the mental health component to that because they're both so intricately connected.
Huh. Whoa.
So like we were talking about with blood sugar, how that, does this to your blood sugar. Puts you on this blood sugar roller coaster that will then heighten your nervous system because your body is seeing this as a form of stress. You spike your blood sugar really high, and then insulin rushes in to usher all of that glucose to the cells so that the cells have energy to be able to do their thing. Then all of a sudden your blood sugar drops, and it needs to be in this like very stable level for your body not to go into sort of like a fight or flight kind of mode, into a stress mode. So when we're doing that, we're spiking your blood sugar, then your body is naturally lowering your blood sugar. Then all of a sudden you're in this like valley, and your body goes into stress mode. Your cortisol spikes, you know, your hormones get all imbalanced, your thyroid starts shutting down, your liver gets congested, like all of these things start happening, and we don't even realize that that has then affected our nervous system, and then is doing weird things to our brain, you know, which is then controlling our hormones and everything else. So it's kind of a vicious cycle. If we're not taking care of both of them at the same time, then one is going to be affecting the other.
Well, I was going to say, you answered my question, so I'm going to go to the next one. How can we improve the connection between our mind and gut?
Like I was talking about the blood sugar, that would probably be one of the biggest ways you can do it, is just keep your blood sugar stable, you know, really making sure that you're not having an abundance of carbohydrates. You're not eating too much processed foods. You're not drinking alcohol on an empty stomach. You're not drinking caffeine on an empty stomach. All of those will just like shoot your blood sugar up, and then you'll have these gnarly crashes. You know, so like even when we're eating snacks, let's say, like if you're going to start snacking on potato chips, that's just a carbohydrate, right? For the most part. And so your blood sugar is going to spike, and then it'll drop drastically. And that's how we get on these cycles of like binging. When if you just had a little bit of protein and fat with your potato chips, you probably would have felt satisfied. Blood sugar would be stable. Nervous system would be stable. And then you could go about your life, you know? So I would say blood sugar is probably one of those major ways that you can get that back to stable. You know, like I have clients who cut out some of their caffeine, like not, you know, just not like the 3 cups a day like they were before. They get more of the stable blood sugar going, and all of a sudden their anxiety just like melts away. You know, it's pretty fascinating how quickly it happens.
So let's talk a little bit about your happy, healthy method. Healthy, happy? I always say it backwards.
Healthy and happy method.
Okay, that's what I thought. And I knew I was saying it wrong. Damn it, Brianna. The healthy, happy method. I have it written down too, like right in front of my face, which is also like, come on, get it together, lady. And why that your approach is so unique to your clients. What is it about it that makes it special?
For me,
and why does it work, I guess, is the bigger thing.
Well, so you get a whole course component where there's tons of information coming your way. You know, you can watch it at your own pace. But what I find to be the most valuable is that we meet weekly, one-on-one. And so I can go through your food journals. We can talk about your daily habits, you know, your preferences, all the things. And we can really lock in like, okay, you know, here's the advice in general that you might find, but I've got XYZ that affects this. I can't do that. So then what? You're stuck without answers, right? But if you have someone like me who's going in with you one-on-one, working through all of these little, you know, intricacies, then we can really get to the root of the problem. We can start plugging in different options for you to get the same result. So like I
think that's really important to highlight. So go ahead.
Well, like I was talking about with the clients with anxiety that, you know, start stabilizing their blood sugar and don't have as many issues. Like you probably wouldn't have ever known about this if you didn't listen to something like this, where we're talking about a mind-gut connection, or you work with a practitioner that talks to you about it. Because how often does your doctor talk to you about this, you know? And so to me, like,
never.
If you, like we were talking about with the, you know, gut-mind connection, if you've got a ton of anxiety going on, like how quickly are you going to give up on a diet or give up on a workout plan or whatever if you don't have the answers right in front of you? You know, if you don't have somebody to bounce ideas off of or work with you one-on-one. So that's what I really love about the program. It's just like, the, you know, the customization component to it that really helps people that just otherwise wouldn't be able to get their questions answered, you know?
Yeah, and I think that's important, like the customization. But I think sometimes, like, we all know this. There's all these like fad diets. You know, there's Ben Atkins, there's keto, there's all these things that, you know, do this and you'll lose weight or you'll be healthier, blah, blah, blah. That's the marketing, that's the spin, because we're all trying to get there quick.
Yeah.
But what we fail to recognize is that we are like independent chemistry sets.
Right.
So, and you can speak to this more than I can, but having somebody to be accountable to and to point things out that has your best interest at heart, I think is really an important like focus of like what you bring to the table, and like a nutritionist like yourself, it's things that are applicable. It's like me drinking water every day before I have a cup of coffee literally has changed my coffee consumption. And having it with food, I don't want 2 or 3 cups of coffee. I have maybe one. I also bought better coffee, so it actually tastes good and not awful. But that's only been recent. From Costa Rica. I got it from Costa Rica. Oh, nice. You can appreciate that. Yeah. And so I think that like the accountability component and that sheer fact that it's not one size fits all. Why do we continue to put ourselves in cycles where we gravitate toward one size fits all? Because we're all unique in our chemistry. And what impacts me with my Irish, Italian, European DNA is going to be different for somebody, you know, who's from South America or from Africa or from Asia. So I think that's so important that you brought up that customization thing, because I think that's crucial to anybody like having true health and wellness. That's why I like talking to you. Man.
Yeah, the diet component is tricky because I think, you know, diets work. Like, they work. And there's a reason why they work, but there's also a reason why they're not sustainable. You know, if it's not perfectly working out for you, which the majority of diets don't work out for you perfectly, then all of a sudden you fall off, you go back to your old ways, because what the hell, why not? If it's not working for me now, what's ever going to work for me? And then people just get stuck, you know, they get stuck. They don't know what to do. Yeah. And so they freeze. And so what I love about the program is that, you know, when people get stuck, we have our weekly meetings so we can get them unstuck. Like, what is this thing holding you back? We'll work through that, and we can work together to come up with tangible, you know, action items that you can start working through for the week.
And how long does your program last?
12 weeks.
12 weeks. Okay. So it's not even like a crazy commitment.
No, it's 3 months.
You know,
and
like 12 weeks.
The changes that people go through with 3 months of consistent effort is wild. Like, blows your mind what kind of results people get after only 3 months. But it requires consistency. It requires knowing what you're doing. And it really requires having that accountability component like you were talking about.
I like that you said that, because I was going to bring up a post you put up on Instagram recently about 80-20. Yeah. And you said it's like, it's actually, what are you consistent in? Like, it's okay to have that 20% of indulgence, blah, 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 but make sure you're doing so much consistently. And I think that's what people forget. And I talk about this in other podcasts too on different subjects, but it's, what are you choosing regularly is what you get all the time, you know? And I think sometimes it's easy, like, okay, if you don't stick with a diet or whatever it is, like, let's just use keto for an example, because I know so many people who have done that. You're going to get to a certain point, but then you probably will plateau and you might not reach a goal, or you might, which I think is really important to point out, especially for women, your body needs different things at different times, and that fluctuates like monthly. Can you speak, this is like off the cuff, can you speak a little bit about paying attention to like your cycle and like maybe how food can help you stay like on a good scope? I think that's really important to discuss. And
truly that goes beyond your period, you know, that goes beyond your monthly cycle. That can lend to like times of stress, you know, if you're breastfeeding, like if you're working out really hard, whatever you're doing in your day to day is really going to affect your metabolic needs, you know, your dietary needs, your lifestyle needs, all of these things. So like when you're in your cycle, for instance, when you're on your period, when you're menstruating, you're going to have lower energy. Like you're going to be losing iron through your blood. You're going to be needing more nutrients because you're in a shedding state, you know, and most people just continue on as if it's nothing new. Whereas, you know, when you're in your follicular stage, which is, you know, right after you've bled and now all of a sudden you're producing eggs for them to go through the next cycle, you're going to need more nutrients for that. You're going to have to fuel that surge in energy. You're going to have to fuel, you know, this metabolic process that your body is doing. when you're under a lot of stress, you're burning through minerals rapidly, very, very rapidly. Like magnesium is one of potassium, like all of these minerals are just burning through your system because you're in a state of stress, and whether you feel like you're constantly in motion or not, your nervous system is. So it's making everything active. So you're burning through all of these nutrients, but maybe you're not replenishing them, you know? Typically when we're under a lot of stress, our gut starts acting all weird. We stop eating as much, you know, and then we get into this loop of like, okay, I'm in a stressed out state. I'm not doing the things my body needs. I'm probably loading up on caffeine and alcohol to kind of get me through this state, burning all the things even more. And then we end up even worse than we started, you know? So depending on where you're at, you really need a different, your body's going to need different things.
Dang. See, I think that's awesome. And I think we forget that. I think like, I forget that as a woman sometimes. Like I'm not a big red meat person per se. I don't gravitate towards that. I don't crave it, but whenever I crave it, I make sure to have it. Yeah. Like we've talked about this independently, about the quality of meats that you purchase, and making sure, why don't you speak to that more, because we've talked about the quality versus the quantity and what that means for your body. So would you speak to that, like the quality of what you put into your body and why that's important?
Yeah. So remember earlier we were talking about like your stress bucket, right? Like there's only so much you can fit into the stress bucket before it starts overflowing and you've got this downward spiral of events. So think of conventional quality meats and dairy and things like that is probably one of those stressors. Like these animals are being raised in terrible conditions. They're being fed a diet that is not what they're supposed to be eating. That is then storing toxins in their fats, which then we're consuming. So the quality of meat, dairy, eggs, things like that is super important because it'll affect your toxic load, which will then affect your stress levels, your nervous system, and then on down the cascade.
Wow.
Like,
see, there you have it, people.
For instance, when you eat a diet like high in omega-6s, which anytime you have a ton of corn in your diet, or you're eating a lot of meats or dairy or eggs that are like produced from animals that are raised on a lot of corn, your omega-6 to omega-3 balance goes out of whack. Your omega-6s being super high compared to your omega-3s will then make your body in a constant state of inflammation. So like that alone can cause a whole host of problems we're not even talking about, you know? Like obviously we need protein, we need fat, we need calcium from dairy, we need all of these things, but you also need to be cognizant of what those items are doing to you on the other side of the coin, you know? Yeah. So quality is I think an important factor.
I've changed a lot of what we consume in my household, and I, spend the extra money for whatever it may be, like the meats or the eggs or whatever. I try to make sure, first of all, whatever I can is local. I'm not brave enough to have chickens like you are. I also don't trust my cat and my dog not to tear them apart. Okay. And I'm not sure my HOA would appreciate them in my backyard. But that's neither here nor there. Before even the HOA thing, like I can't even keep a plant alive. I'm not going to get a chicken.
Well, you saw me trying to clip their wings the other day. It's no walk in the park.
That's so funny. That was great. I was like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. And I'm definitely not getting chickens. But on that note, like I think we're in this like weird, I'm getting on my soapbox, get ready people, generational thing where we realize some of the knowing your farmer, we're coming back to that kind of thing, and understanding like where our food comes from is really important, because we don't go to the butcher and we don't pick out the cow like we used to back in the day. But now we're coming back to like, okay, where is this meat coming from? What are you feeding it? What fields are this has this been in? Mm-hmm. Because we've been told for so long, saturated fats are bad. Mm-hmm. This fat is bad. Oh, too much of this is bad. And it's like, really, it's not bad. It's when things are over processed. And again, this is just my own personal research and things that I've found. When things are over processed and there's additives to them, that's where I don't want to say danger comes in, but the potential for side effects to your body, because it's inorganic material that you're putting in there that's not supposed to be in there because of the way, like you're talking about, there's 100 chickens in like a, square foot, and they're all shitting all over everything. And then they're eating the food and it's like, that's
they poop a lot too, let me tell you. A lot.
So that's where like the quality of the product does come into play, because you don't want chickens who poop a lot to be eating food that has their poop on it. It's not good.
You look at like all of this, fake processed meat being pushed now as the healthy alternative. But if you compare that to regenerative farming, where farmers are actually working with the animals and the land and everything has a purpose and it's, fortifying and supplying all the things it needs itself, you could see that like there is a clear difference in what is healthy and what is not. One is fresh, supports the environment, is good for the animal, is good for the human. The other one is overly processed, so far removed from like a natural ingredient, does not provide the same quality of nutrition, So there's a lot of things that happen when we're talking about quality and, kinds and all of those things.
I'm going to go down 2 rabbit holes with you right now, and these are not planned rabbit holes, so get ready. The plant burgers. I was reading this article recently about, I believe, and I could be misspeaking, and if you know what I'm talking about, please interject. I think it's like Nexane. It's some kind of like chemical that they put in the burgers that they're not supposed to be able to, it's not supposed to transition to the product itself. But they have found residue on these like plant-based burgers. Ooh. And so it's really interesting. I got to find it and send it to you because I think you'll find it fascinating. But yeah, it's so that's what I mean. Sometimes I'm not downing like the meatless burgers or anything like that. I'm saying that there's stuff in there that's not good for our bodies, and anything that is processed, you do have to be a little bit aware of. I'm going to find that article because I want you to go down that rabbit hole with me later.
Well, just like without knowing the context of that article necessarily, I don't really know what you're speaking to, but in general, just understanding that like what you're eating is highly processed. It's highly, highly processed. You were so far removed from like the original natural source of these ingredients, most of which have a ton of processed, like synthetic man-made ingredients added to it. And then on top of that, you've got a ton of soy that's in these products, which especially for women can be incredibly harmful for our hormones. Like soy replicates estrogen in the body, and so it can have all kinds of hormonal effects. And most women are already estrogen dominant. Like I would say the majority of women, if you struggle with any kind of issue, you're probably estrogen dominant. And so adding soy to that is just making your situation completely worse,
I think that's a really good thing to know, because I've heard that, but it's been a while, and I didn't realize like what soy actually did. Yeah,
it basically mimics estrogen. And so when you're eating a food that acts like a hormone, it can be really hard for your body to regulate itself, just like if you are taking birth control, it's hard for your body to regulate its own hormone levels. And so just paying attention to those kinds of things can be huge for people's health.
Absolutely. The other rabbit hole I want to go down is inflammation, and how some foods that we think might be good for us, putting that in quotes, quote unquote, good for us, actually are the cause of discomfort in our bodies. What do you got for me on that topic?
Lots of things. So like, for instance, let me give you the example of nightshades. So nightshades are a class of vegetables like peppers, any kind of chili, bell pepper, things like that. Potatoes, eggplant, tomatoes, things that are pretty regular in our diet can actually be inflammatory. And so you've got that one component. But then there's also a whole other component where the majority of plants actually have these protective parts to them. They've got these, we call them anti-nutrients. Basically what they do is they protect the plant, but then when we consume them, they kind of harm our gut on the way down. And so doing so can then cause different kinds of issues with your small intestine and all kinds of different digestive organs. And doing that can then cause like your immune system to ramp up. It can cause inflammation that way. So like one thing, people love to talk about how healthy kale is, and it absolutely is nutrient rich. But if you're not eating it appropriately. Like you're not cooking it, you're not chewing it completely. All of that fiber and all of those anti-nutrients can get into the system and start wreaking havoc, especially if you've already got digestive dysfunction going on. So yes, veggies are very healthy. Yes, they've got tons of nutrients, but there's also another side to the story. You know, they're not always the best thing for us. That's why a lot of people will go vegetarian and then all of a sudden realize, oh, my digestive system is completely wrecked now, like all kinds of issues. I thought I was being so healthy, and yet why do I feel worse? You know, and that's why.
I see. I love that you said like the nightshades. Did you say potatoes too?
Yeah. I know.
See, if I could live off of like 4 things, it would be cheese, potatoes, tomatoes, and like broccoli.
Yeah. So you're at a disadvantage there for a number of reasons. Like cheese, as long as you're getting good quality cheese, no problem. However, still can be inflammatory. But like tomatoes and potatoes are one of those things that a lot of people develop reactions to because they consume them so much. And I am absolutely one of those people. Like potatoes are my nemesis. It will always be. So like, you know, I just try to swap them out for sweet potatoes sometimes because sweet potatoes don't have the same effects as potatoes do. But, you know, you can still have your potato, but, you know, maybe not every day like I was before.
Damn it. Yeah. Dreams. I was like, God damn it. Like I've heard some interesting things about nightshades too. And that's one perk of like working in hospitality for so long and being part of a restaurant group that had like a plant-based, like anti-inflammatory diet, True Food Kitchen, if anybody's familiar. And they do pretty damn good job in keeping those recipes clean, if I can give a shout out to the company. And I've said this before, when I worked there, I feel like that's the healthiest in my body I ever felt because everything was so clean, but I wasn't eating a million potatoes. Yeah. I had a lot more sweet potatoes in my diet. Yeah. I was eating like ancient grains with like quinoa and brown rice. And what's that other one that I always hate to cook? Farro. Yeah. There's another one too. Lentils. I ate a lot more lentils than I do. I never, amaranth. I don't think I've had that since I left True Food Kitchen. So, like, I have a whole bag of lentils sitting in my pantry, but every time I make lentils, I like overcook them and they turn into mush, and then I'm just disappointed.
You gotta
get
the right kind. I think red ones are supposed to turn into mush, but like the green and brown ones aren't as bad.
Well, then I'm cooking them wrong.
Maybe. But
I served the food. I didn't make the food.
But there is a reason that like that anti-inflammatory diet is so positive for people, you know, because like many of us, because of our shit diets, because of our shit food quality, like we're dealing with a lot of inflammation on a daily basis. There's a lot of chronic inflammation happening that we're just not aware of, that we're constantly contributing to. And if we're not taking care of that, both through our food and by mitigating it in other ways, then we're just loading on, you know, the stress continues to pile on and all of a sudden your bucket's overflowing.
There we go. My bucket's overflowing, but that's for different things. So we're not going to talk about on a nutrition podcast. We covered those topics pre-recording. All right. That's a lot of really amazing insight, Lauren. Is there any other notes or insight you would like to provide to us?
I think, you know, in general, like, people just really need to become aware of what causes stress both on their body and in their life, and just really start acknowledging all of these areas. Like I have many, many clients that are like, I'm not that stressed, but you can clearly see it in their reactions, in their food journals, in their habits, and all the things they do. And it's like, hold on, you're a mom of 3, you work outside of the home as well as in the home. You're probably taking care of the food for most of their meals. On top of that, you're pushing yourself to work out. You've got all of these extracurricular activities, both for yourself and for your children. You know, you've got this social life you're trying to maintain. You've got all of these things that are just loading up your plate, you know, and then you're not taking care of yourself by eating well. you're drinking a ton of coffee and wine and you're not drinking enough water. You know, you're probably getting food with a ton of pesticides in it. You're probably eating a very high carb diet because you're stressed and on the go and needing to eat a lot of processed foods to get you through. Like, there's a long list of stressors that people are dealing with and they're not acknowledging and they're not doing anything to take care of it. And then they're like, why is my health falling apart? Like, of course this would happen when I'm in the middle of my most stressful season in life. All of a sudden now I've got this health issue I need to deal with. But if you were to go back and mitigate some of these stressors along the way, your body would be more resilient to this stressful period, you know? So I think just really understanding that, like, your stress directly affects your health and your health directly affects your stress. And the more you can really just like get this mind gut connection to be more in line, you can get your nervous system to calm down a little bit, you know, then you can probably deal with things a lot easier.
I feel like there's so many different avenues we could take down for health and nutrition. And this is just one aspect of how focusing on your nutrition and wellness, your overall wellness, because it is different. And I think that's why it's so important to highlight your program, the Healthy Happy Method, because it is an individual. I can't speak for some reason today, so apologies. Your individualized approach is really helpful because nutrition is not a one size fits all. Like we've already said that. So just to like reiterate that, and it looks different for everybody. And like you said, there's, you know, clients who have 1 kid or 5 kids or no kids or whatever they're trying to do, all that impacts it. And the more I talk to people, this is why I talk to people, because the more I talk to people, the more I realize I don't know things. And I also realize how interconnected it all is, you know, like, and you can't have one without the other. So I appreciate you and your time and your insight. It's so good to see your beautiful, shiny face. That's Lauren. You can find her at LA Sand Wellness on Instagram. It's at LA Sand Wellness, right? Okay. And it's lasandwellness.com. She's incredible. She doesn't care where you live. She can help you no matter what. The weekly check-ins are amazing. And whenever she has time for me, I'm going to sign up for it. So.
That'd be right. Also,
let me know.
Also, I am very excited to announce that this month I'm going to be doing like a little mini course, like not the full, you know, because it can be an investment to do like the full one-on-one customization, all of those things. And so what I was finding was that my first month working with clients, I was working on the exact same thing with every single one of them across the board. And so I'm really excited to roll out this new little mini course about blood sugar management, like we were talking about earlier, so that it can help people kind of get into like a balanced state before they come to see me, because, you know, you can still have a ton of other things that you're dealing with. But in order to be able to work with me, I'm going to enforce this, like have to take this blood sugar mini course in order for you to understand some of the concepts more broadly before you start the one-on-one. So I'm super excited about that. Because it'll be super affordable.
That's awesome.
So that anyone can do it, and they can do it from the comfort of their own home.
Oh, that's incredible. That's good to know. Fun fact. When does that launch?
Sometime this month.
Cool. Okay, well, keep it. That's where you got to go follow her so you know all this stuff is. Also, her content on social media is great. It's a little personal. It's a little business. And you got to scroll back and look for that flipping chicken wings video. It's
I think
hysterical.
those stories are really good.
It's great.
Next time.
Man, you got to put that back up, man, because that is hilarious. It was great. I was like, look at those assholes chasing chickens.
Yeah, exactly.
I was laughing at your expense, so thank you for sharing that.
I'm so glad.
As I chased my 4-year-old, my dog, and my cat, you know, around the house.
This is a solid form of
I hear you.
exercise.
Anyway. You're trying to keep that overall wellness in check, right?
Exactly. You got to mitigate stress however you can.
Right? Yeah. I bet I didn't think about that. Having those animals, that's a bit of a stress release. Do you
Stressor and stress relief.
And do they let you pet them?
If I feed them well enough, they let me.
It's an equilibrium.
If they're tired or if they're well fed, then they're like, oh, sure, we can be friends. But otherwise, they're not about it.
They're like, go away, lady. Where's the grub?
Yeah, literally. They'll come to me and ask for things. Like, they will literally, like, come and squawk at me. And then once they get what they need, they're done.
Oh, that's amazing. That's what my cat does.
Yeah.
How funny. Anyway, I'm the mom who knows nada. My name is Brianna. That's Lauren. LA Sand Wellness. You can find her. Until next time, have fun learning all the things you didn't know you needed to know.